Greetings. The Adrian Dominican Sisters welcome you to a presentation of a sister story. I am Sister Peg O'Flynn, and today we're having a conversation with Sister Yolanda Pomante, one of our dear sisters who is presently residing in Port St. Lucie, Florida. Now, Yolanda used to be, back when we had our nun names, she used to be Sister Paul Marie. So some of you may know her as that. Others may know her as Yolanda. Others still may know her as Yoli. Right? Right.
There are a few others, a few other names if you want.
That's true. Good response. Good response. Okay, this is your time for your story, Yolanda. Now, it's very hard to do this, your long history, in such a short time, but the highlights, you've got many highlights, I'm sure. So let's begin with where you began, like your beginnings, where you were born, where you grew up. I think you grew up in Roseville, Michigan.
Correct.
So tell us a little bit about your beginnings.
Okay, I was, as you said, I was born in Roseville, Michigan, and I come from a family of 12.
Oh, that's right.
My father died when I was 5 years old. And so my mother had to move out of the house that we were living in because we had been evicted.
Oh,
and so our family was split up for a couple of years. Some of my brothers and sisters lived with one of my married brothers, and some of the others lived with friends. And my grandmother took my mother and 5 of us into her house, and she also had a family of 3 children.
Wow.
So we lived with her until my mother found someone who would finally rent to her, who was a woman without a husband because my father had died.
Yeah.
And there were 12 children.
Oh,
however, a couple of my older brothers were living with friends, and they continued to live with them. So my mother ended up with my she's really her stepmother and stepfather.
Okay.
And 5 of us lived with them.
Yolanda, were you one of the youngest?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I was the 10th of 12.
Okay.
And my oldest brother was married, and a couple of my older brothers lived with friends after we were evicted from our home. And couple of my sisters lived with my oldest brother who had been married. And so the rest of us, there were 6 of us that lived with my grandmother, who was really my mother's stepmother.
Yes.
And stepfather.
Okay.
It was not her real parents. And she took us in, and we lived with her until my mother was able to find a house for us that someone would rent to her. It was hard for her to get someone to rent a house because her husband was dead.
Yeah.
And, a couple of my brothers were out of the house. My oldest brother was married, but a couple of my brothers lived with friends for a while. And a couple of my sisters lived with other people.
So they kind of stayed with them, and then your mother went out and looked for a house. Did you ever get one?
Yes, she did.
Uh-huh.
It was probably a year or 2 later that she finally found a house that someone would rent to her. And however, it had 4 bedrooms, but one bedroom was like a closet. And so, it was only big enough to put a bed in it, not a dresser or anything else. But my oldest brother had gotten married.
Yes, yeah.
And
So where did you go? Where did you go to school? Your grade school? Where did you get your schooling from?
I started out at Sacred Heart in Roseville, Michigan.
Okay.
I was there for grade 1 and part two of grade 2. And then when we moved to the city, I went to Annunciation.
Okay. In Detroit, yeah.
I was taught by the Immaculate Heart of Mary Sisters from Monroe. And all of us who were in school, when we got into the parish, Monsignor Stapleton was the pastor of the parish at the time. And he told my mother that she was to send us to the Catholic school and not to worry about the tuition.
Oh, that was good.
But the sisters were not as nice as he was. And so my older sisters and my brother all had to work at school, after their school hours. They had to help clean the classrooms and, the blackboards and sweep the floors and do jobs around the school as payment for our going to school. And let me see.
So was that a grade school and high school?
It was.
So you were there the whole 12 years?
I was there. No, I had started out at Sacred Heart in Rose.
Oh, that's right.
And I was in second grade when I went to Annunciation. And so, but I did go there for the rest of my school years.
Okay.
And as we got older, my older brothers and sisters had worked in the school to help pay the tuition. Now that was Monsignor Stapleton was the pastor at that time. And that was not his recommendation. That was the sisters.
The sisters, yeah.
And it was the Immaculate Heart of Mary Sisters.
Right.
Lovely ladies.
Yes, that's all right. We've heard that story on many of our sister stories. So how did you end up with the Adrian Dominicans?
I was a good friend of Father Hickey's.
Yes.
Was a priest at our parish. And, I had taken care of the doorbell at the parish many evenings. And so he was taking one of the girls from our parish to Adrian because she wanted to enter. And he had me go along as a companion. So when I went there, I found the sisters to be very different than the Immaculate Heart of Mary sisters. Now, at one time, I had an older sister who had entered the IHMs.
Oh, okay.
And so I decided that was not the place for me. And I had seen Monroe, and Monroe was very different than Adrian. And the difference was that everything was very pristine. The buildings were gorgeous and the lawns and the trees. And then I went to Adrian and I found it to be very different, more homey, more welcoming. The sisters were friendlier, and as I look back on it, I realized, that the IHM sisters were partly cloistered.
Oh.
And so consequently, they were not as outgoing as our sisters. And when I got to Adrian, it was very homey to me.
So who was your sponsor? How did you... was there an Adrian Dominican that took you under her wing and kind of sponsored you?
No, actually, it was Father Hickey.
Okay.
He was from Adrian. He knew the Adrian sister.
Oh, okay.
But then he did introduce me to the sisters who were at a neighboring parish, Sister Margaret Ellen.
Right.
And I'm trying to think of what the youngest sister's name was. She's an Adrian now, but I can't think of her name.
Okay.
But he was taking one of the girls from our parish to Adrian, who was entering. So he asked me to go along because he had to have a companion. And I think that was kind of strange because, I rode up to Adrian, we dropped her off, and then I went back to Detroit with him alone. So, this business of needing a companion was kind of, as I thought about it, it was a little bit not.
So he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. Yeah.
Well, I used to help out at the parish a lot before I entered it. And when I was in school, when the sisters would come back from Monroe every summer, myself, my brother, and my sisters would go up and help the sisters get ready for the school year. And so, we were very familiar with the IHMs. But, when I made the comparison between Adrian and the IHMs, Adrian was more homey to me.
Correct. Yes. So you graduated from high school in 1949.
Correct.
Okay. And then you entered in 1953.
Right.
So what did you do between high school graduation and going to the convent to Adrian?
Well, I went to night school.
Oh.
And I worked as in an accounting office.
Okay.
And that's where I learned how to do accounting because when I was in high school, I had worked at this club and I was the receptionist. And while I was there, the accountant, I worked in the same office as the accountants. And so the accountant would give me things to do, like balancing the checkbooks and receiving the checks on the bills before they went out. And so that's how I got into the accounting.
See, God was getting you ready to help Andrea. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
But not just Andrea. When I entered, I worked for Sister Cletus.
Okay.
And I worked in the accounting office.
Very good.
And from then on, every parish I went to, I kept the books.
Good.
I never had any formal training until I was, let me see, I'm trying to think. I was out of school quite a while before I got back into taking a couple of accounting courses. Okay. And so that's how I got into being in the accounting.
So when you got sent out after you made profession, you were sent out to mission to teach? Is that what you started your ministry?
I was sent out while I was a postulant.
Oh, okay.
And I was on 3 different missions.
Oh.
I was in Chicago, Our Lady of Sorrows in Chicago. I was at St. Celestine's in Chicago, and I was at St. St.
Well, that's all right. You were in Chicago. Yeah.
So then when I went back to Detroit, I was sent on a mission in Detroit. And so all the while I was a postulant, I was really out on mission. I never really had much of a postulancy, learning the rules and regulation, that kind of thing.
Well, you were a few years older than other people in your crowd. So you were more mature. So you got to go out. Yeah, you got to go out. They kept the rest of us in that were teenagers, still teenagers. Yeah. So what's a ministry that you've been involved in that really was very significant to you, or maybe transformative? It was very special. Do you have any particular ministry that?
Probably St. Paul's in Grosse Pointe.
Okay.
And that, my family at that time lived in Grosse Pointe, but they lived in a different parish. But I think that was kind of special because we had a grade school and a high school. And so there were like 21 sisters.
Right. It's a big place.
And it was, I think that's where I really learned to live with other people and being accepting because we had lots of different personalities in that house.
That's right. And that's when the gift of silence helped out.
Right. But it was a great place to be. I loved being there. Yeah. We had great kids in school, and the sisters who taught there, there was not a difference between the high school and the grade school sisters. I mean, there was always intermingling. Because they were in high school, they were not better than those of us. Right. So it was a great place to be. I really liked my time there.
Okay, so that was a very special place. What did you teach when you taught?
I taught most of the time it was math and religion.
Okay. Math and religion. In high school? Or
grade school.
Upper grades. Oh, the grade school.
Okay. Yes, I had junior high.
Mm-hmm.
I did teach sophomores at St. Paul's. I taught religion to them when I was at St. Paul's.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed as I looked at your history that you did a lot in the office work, administration in various places. Like you at Barry, you did some administration. I bet you did administration at Rosarian too, huh?
Correct.
Yeah.
At Rosarian, I was the treasurer.
Good. Wow, that's a big job. Yeah.
Right. And we. That was kind of a special place. I loved Rosarian Academy, and I loved being at Barry. That was also a great place to be. I really loved all my missions.
Good.
That I had bad experiences. I've always learned a lot on each mission I was at.
What's something in particular that you learned about yourself? Maybe early on in your life, an experience you had that you thought,
I never really thought of that.
Well, you'll have to think about it, and then the next time I interview you, you can give me the answer to that.
Okay.
I think as we look back, we see the remarkable things. I mean, as you look back and you think of what you've been through, your family, your upbringing. I mean, losing your dad so young, and then your mother having to adjust. And that has a lot to do with the person that you are now. All of those affected you in some way. And I know you've lost quite a few of your siblings. I think that's what happens when you have a big family, right? Yeah.
Right. My dad died when I was 5.
Right, that's what you mentioned,
Right, so I really didn't know him that well. The only thing I remember about him was that, off of our kitchen where we lived, there was a rocking chair. And I remember sitting in his lap. This is the only thing I remember about him. And he looked at my hands and he said, "You're going to be my pianist." And I thought, I was a child. I was a child at that time, but I had long fingers. And of course, I never had any music lessons other than what we had, as a class. And so, of course, I don't play the piano nor any other kind of instrument.
I was wondering, I thought that was a secret we didn't know about.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
But I love music. You know, my dad was right from Italy. Okay. So he was very much into music.
Right.
So,
Okay. What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun?
Fun, yeah.
Right now?
Not right this minute. Well, I know right this minute you're having fun telling your story, but other times, how do you relax?
Well, I have a puppy.
Good.
And he and I are best friends.
Good.
And we do a lot of stuff together. What else do I do?
Tell me, what are some fun things you can do in Port St. Lucie? That's near Fort Pierce, isn't it? Or is it?
Yes. Yeah, it's very close to Fort Pierce.
Okay.
You know, we're in a nice community.
Good.
And we have, you know, a nice area.
Drive to the beach.
And we're close to the beach.
Good.
And so, you know, although we haven't spent much time there recently, but, you know, we've often driven there in the evenings. And what?
That's good. How did you survive during the pandemic? Well, it's still the pandemic, but when we were had to stay put, how did you like staying put?
Well, you know, I pretty much stayed put to begin with because I don't have wheels.
Yeah.
So I can't, you know, just get out and go for a ride. But I survived because I had this little puppy.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw him.
Yeah, I saw him. He was on the couch behind you, the bed behind you.
He's very demanding. He's the boss.
Uh-huh.
He's the boss.
He's the man in your life, huh? And what's your puppy's name? What's his name? What's his name?
Brandy Alexander.
Brandy, you told me. Brandy Alexander.
Yeah, there he is.
Very good. Do you ever see any of your family members that are left or nieces? You must have hundreds of nieces and nephews.
You know, we just had a reunion not too long ago.
Oh, good. Okay.
And so, you know, the only ones that are left are the three youngest of us.
Okay.
Two younger sisters. And I see them if we have any family gatherings. And as I said, we just had a family gathering this past summer.
Uh-huh.
A year ago.
Okay.
And, you know, all of my nieces and nephews and their families were there. And so that was a nice thing. And I don't, you know, my sister, I have two younger sisters left. My youngest sister.
Two younger.
That's what I said, two younger. Oh, I'm two younger. There are three of us left. My youngest sister has dementia, and she lives in a home, which is very near one of her daughters, and she has two daughters and two boys. All of them are married. But she doesn't live with them. And I think that was as much her choice.
Good, yeah.
I think it was her choice, actually. Mm-hmm. Because all my sisters and brothers said they never wanted to live with
well, they're smart. Yeah, and the kids, many times the kids don't want their parents living with them, you know, and they can have greater sociability if they're in a place where there's other people their age.
Right. So my youngest sister is really in a good place. My sister Dolores lives by herself, but her children live in the vicinity. Mm-hmm. So she has a a granddaughter that
Okay.
lives not too far from her, and she
Oh, that's
sees
good.
her every day. So,
Do you like to read? Do you have a favorite book you're reading right now?
I love to read. I can't even think of the name of the book I'm reading
I know,
now.
but you,
Author.
It's Ken Follett.
oh, yes,
Is the author. I read all different kinds of stuff.
that's good. Keeps your mind going.
Right. I
Yeah.
don't, and I always have a book going. And
Wonderful.
sometimes I have two going at the same time, which
Right.
I have right now, because I have one on my iPad that I read before I go to bed at night, before I go to sleep at night.
Okay.
And the other one I read at lunchtime.
Do you have a favorite motto or scripture saying that's very special to you?
Yes. And it was by St. Augustine. My heart was made for thee, O Lord, and it will be restless until it rests in thee.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. That was on, you know how the sisters used to have sayings on their board above
Yes, our bulletin boards.
Well, when I was a senior, that was on the blackboard. That was above, our blackboard. It was a saying that the sister had. And I've always liked that saying. That's my favorite.
That's good. That's wonderful. Well, anything else? I can't ask you how your ministry was with your boss sitting there next to you right now, but I'm sure that was a good experience.
Well, it was,
Yeah.
I've liked all the positions that I had.
Yeah. You're very adaptable.
I think I was very fortunate.
Yeah.
Personally, because I was trusted, I guess I want to say, in every place that I was in. And I was always given the job of keeping the books, which is what I did before I entered the convent.
Yeah.
So I liked that aspect of my life.
Good.
Because
and that's a very important job. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us, maybe that I didn't ask? What were you hoping I would ask and I didn't? Anything?
Not that I can think of offhand. Yeah, the only thing I would like to say, my brother Joe was in the same class with me.
Oh.
He had failed one year.
Okay.
And the reason he failed was because every time there was a funeral at our church, the priest would send for my brother Joe, because he missed so much school that he failed a year, and we were both in the same class growing up. And everybody thought we were twins, but we weren't. But I was very close to my brother Joe.
That's nice to hear.
So, our friends were the same friends.
Nice.
Because we were both in the same grade as we grew up. So that was a real plus for me.
Well, we're very lucky. We should thank, is it Monsignor Hickey, the one that got you to Adrian?
No, it was Father Hickey.
Father Hickey. So we are grateful to him that he kind of got you there, and you kind of felt you belonged, and then you went home, and finally came to Adrian.
There was such a difference between the Immaculate Heart of Mary sisters and the Dominicans.
And the Detroit was filled with the IHMs. Now we were there too, but after a while, I guess they didn't want us. But so many of our sisters have said they had the IHMs and then they had the Adrians, and it was the joy of the Adrians that encouraged them, that inspired them to come. But anyway, they're good. They're a good one. We always called them our country cousins, the IHMs. We're very close to them. So
I had an older sister who had joined the IHMs at
Yeah.
one time. And of course, they sent her home, but she never should have joined to begin with.
Oh,
My mother always said, that was a big mistake. She should have known better.
oh, so they sent her home. Oh, my, that's hard.
That's
hard.
She was kind of a devil, I mean,
Well,
I say
she
that
should have come to Adrian then, huh?
she picked the wrong place.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah. She was a devil. Oh, that's funny. That's cute. Okay. Well, Yolanda, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. So your story, we thank you for your service. You've been in congregation houses with Barry and Rosarian, and you've been in big places, when you think you're at St. Paul's. And you've touched many lives, and I think you don't even realize the lives you've touched just by your gentleness, your peacefulness. There's a calm about being in your presence. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it really is. I think that's how I was endeared to you because, what?
I'm checking to see if Andrea's agreeing.
Oh, you just tell her she better agree. Who cares what she thinks? I know you. I've known you for a long time. And that's you've got a wonderful presence about you. So continue to be the wonderful person that you are and influencing the sister that you live with so that, yeah, a good give and take there with the two of you. We can't both have the same kind of personalities. So thank you again. And your story will be on in a few weeks. You'll just have to wait and see. So
and thank you very much for the interview.
You're very welcome. And thank your bodyguard too for being next to you. So God bless both of you. Take care.